I stood at the industrial sink in the back hallway of Providence General Hospital on Thanksgiving night, scrubbing vomit from a mop head, when I heard my husband tell another woman he loved her. The phone was pressed to his ear. His voice carried through the steel door he thought was closed. "By Christmas, babe. I'll finally be free of the cleaning lady." If you've ever wondered how a story like this ends, stay with me, because what he didn't know would cost him everything. My name is Diane Vasquez, and for 11 years I cleaned floors. I started on the night shift at Providence General when I was 23, newly married, and convinced that love and hard work could build a life. I learned to think in layers. First pass, the visible mess. Second pass, the stain beneath. Third pass, the residue no one else sees. By the time you've mopped a hallway for a decade, you understand that most dirt doesn't announce itself. It hides in grout lines. It waits. I met Joel Vasquez in a community college statistics class. He was studying business administration. I was taking night classes around my hospital shifts, picking up credits toward a degree I wasn't sure I'd finish. He had an easy smile and a plan. He wanted to open a car wash, then a second one, maybe a chain. He talked about leverage and scale and profit margins. I liked how specific his dreams were. I liked that he had a number in mind. 5 locations in 10 years, he said. I thought that was the kind of clarity you could build a marriage on. We were married 6 months later at City Hall. No reception. My mother made tamales and his father brought a case of beer. Joel worked at a regional bank as a loan officer. I worked nights, cleaned weekdays, and kept our apartment spotless in between. I liked the symmetry. He built futures on paper. I kept the present clean. By year 3, he'd opened the first car wash in Cranston with a small business loan and a co-signer I never met. By year 7, he had 2 locations and a new truck. By year 9, I was still mopping hospital hallways, and he'd stopped asking me about my shifts. Dirt, I'd learned, doesn't just hide in grout. It hides in silences. Thanksgiving 2018. My mother hosted at her triple-decker in Federal Hill. 23 people crammed into her dining room, kids running between floors, my aunts arguing over the pies. Joel ate fast, checked his phone twice, then excused himself. "Work call," he said. "The Warwick location, some vendor issue." I was in the kitchen washing serving platters when I realized I hadn't seen him in 15 minutes. I walked toward the back hallway, the one that led to the basement and the side door my mother never locked. The door to the garage was cracked open. Cold air leaked through. His voice was low but clear. "I know, babe. I know. Just a few more weeks." A pause. "She doesn't suspect anything. Trust me, she's too tired to notice." Another pause, and then he laughed, soft and cruel. "By Christmas, I promise. I'll finally be free of the cleaning lady." I stood there holding a wet dish towel. I did not gasp. I did not cry. I turned around, walked back into the kitchen, and set the towel on the counter. My mother asked if I was feeling all right. I told her I had a headache. Joel came back inside 5 minutes later, smiling, and asked if there was any pie left. I have always believed that a clean surface and a clean conscience are not the same thing. You can polish a floor until it shines and still know there's rot underneath. The skill is deciding when to strip it down to the subflooring and when to walk away entirely. I did not confront Joel that night. I did not confront him the next morning, or the morning after that. I went to work. I clocked in at Providence General at 10 p.m., pulled on my gloves, and started my route on the 4th floor. Pediatrics first, then ICU, then the surgical wing. I mopped in straight lines. I emptied trash cans. I scrubbed sinks until they gleamed. And while I worked, I thought. Joel had always handled our finances. He had the business degree, the job at the bank, the head for numbers. I paid into our joint account every 2 weeks. He paid the mortgage, the utilities, the car insurance. I never questioned it. I trusted him the way you trust a locked door, until you come home and find it open. On December 1st, I took a personal day. I told Joel I had a dentist appointment. Instead, I went to the Providence Public Library and sat at a computer terminal for 4 hours. I logged into our joint bank account. I pulled up 11 years of statements. And I started taking notes. The first irregularity was small. A transfer to an account I didn't recognize, dated 18 months earlier. $300. Then another, 2 weeks later. Then a pattern. Weekly transfers, increasing in amount, always on Fridays. By month 6, he was moving $800 a week into an account that wasn't ours. I pulled up the mortgage records next. Our house in Mount Pleasant, the one Joel said we'd paid off early thanks to his smart refinancing. It wasn't paid off. It had been refinanced 3 times. The most recent loan, taken out 8 months earlier, had pulled $60,000 in equity. I'd never signed the paperwork. I looked closer. The signature on the digital copy wasn't mine. It was close, but the loop on the D was wrong. I took screenshots. I saved them to a thumb drive. I went home and made dinner. Joel came home at 7:30, kissed me on the cheek, and asked what was for dinner. I told him baked chicken. He said it smelled great. We ate in front of the television. He checked his phone 4 times. I did not ask who he was texting. I had already stopped asking questions I knew he'd lie about. The next day, I called a lawyer. Her name was Lena Ortiz, and her office was above a dry cleaner on Atwells Avenue. I'd found her name on a legal aid website. She specialized in asset division and fraud. Her consultation fee was $75. I paid in cash. I sat across from her in a narrow office that smelled like coffee and lavender air freshener and laid out everything I'd found. The transfers. The refinances. The forged signature. She took notes in a spiral-bound notebook, her pen moving fast and sharp. "How long have you known?" she asked. 2 weeks. "And he doesn't know you know?" "No." She leaned back in her chair and studied me. "You're very calm." "I clean trauma rooms for a living," I said. "I'm used to seeing worse than this." She smiled, just a little. "Good. Because what I'm about to suggest requires patience." Lena's plan was simple. Do not confront. Do not accuse. Do not give him any reason to move assets, close accounts, or cover his tracks further. Instead, document everything. Pull records. Screenshot transactions. Preserve evidence. Build the case quietly, the way you'd strip a floor one section at a time. If the signature on the refinance documents is forged, that's fraud, Lena said. If he's transferring marital assets without your knowledge, that's dissipation. Rhode Island is an equitable distribution state. A judge will not look kindly on any of this. What do I need to do? Get me everything. Bank statements, tax returns, business filings for the car washes, any documentation you can access. And don't let him know you're looking. I went home that night and started searching. Joel kept a filing cabinet in the basement, the kind with a cheap lock you could pop with a butter knife. Inside were folders labeled by year. Tax returns going back to our wedding. Business incorporation documents for the car washes. Loan agreements. Partnership papers. I took photos of everything with my phone. 243 photos over 3 nights, taken in 10-minute intervals while Joel was upstairs watching television. I uploaded them to a cloud drive Lena had set up under her firm's account. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. The second account, the one receiving the transfers, was harder to trace. It was held at a credit union in Warwick under an LLC I didn't recognize. But the registered agent for the LLC, listed on the Rhode Island Secretary of State website, was a name I did recognize, Simone Brennan. I ran her name through social media. 27 years old. Account manager at a luxury gym in Cranston. In her profile photo, she wore a gold bracelet I'd seen on Joel's credit card statement 6 months earlier. Purchased from a jeweler in Providence for $1,800 on our anniversary. I did not break anything. I did not scream. I took a screenshot and added it to the file. By mid-December, Lena had everything she needed. 11 years of financials. Proof of transfers. Proof of forged documents. Proof of an LLC created to hide marital assets. She drafted a petition for divorce and a motion for emergency relief, requesting an asset freeze and an evidentiary hearing. When do we file? I asked. When do you want to file? I thought about it. Christmas Eve. She raised an eyebrow. Any particular reason? He told her he'd be free of me by Christmas. I'd like to make sure he's right. Lena smiled. I'll have the papers ready. Joel spent Christmas Eve at the Warwick car wash, or so he said. He texted me at 4 p.m. to say he'd be home late, inventory issue, don't wait up. I told him I understood. I made myself a plate of leftovers from my mother's dinner the night before and sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea. At 6 p.m., a process server knocked on the door of the Warwick car wash and handed Joel an envelope. Inside were the divorce petition, the motion to freeze assets, and a court order requiring his appearance at a hearing on January 3rd. He called me at 6:45. What the hell is this, Diane? I set down my tea. Divorce papers. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. We can talk about this. Whatever you think is going on. I don't think anything, Joel. I know. I have the bank records. I have the LLC filings. I have the forged refinance documents. I have photos of the woman you've been transferring money to for the last 18 months. Silence. I'll be staying at my mother's, I said. Don't contact me except through my attorney. I hung up. The hearing was scheduled for January 3rd at Providence County Family Court. Joel showed up with a lawyer, a man in a charcoal suit who looked annoyed to be working the week after New Year's. I sat beside Lena at the plaintiff's table in a gray dress I'd ironed the night before. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and old wood. The judge, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the filings in silence for 3 full minutes. Then she looked up. Mr. Vasquez, did you or did you not refinance the marital home in April of last year? Joel's lawyer leaned toward the microphone. Your Honor, my client did execute a refinance, but it was for the purpose of business investment, which benefited the marital estate. Did Mrs. Vasquez sign the documents? A pause. We're still reviewing the paperwork, Your Honor. I have the documents right here, Lena said, standing. She approached the bench and handed the judge a folder. The signature on page 4 is demonstrably different from Mrs. Vasquez's signature on their marriage license, their previous mortgage documents, and her hospital employment records. We believe it to be a forgery. The judge put on her glasses and examined the papers. Her expression did not change, but her pen moved across her notepad with increasing speed. Mr. Vasquez, she said, did you create an LLC titled Brennan Holdings in September of last year? Joel shifted in his seat. Yes, Your Honor. And did you transfer funds from your joint marital account into an account held by that LLC without your wife's knowledge? His lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up one hand. I'm asking Mr. Vasquez. Joel's jaw tightened. I moved some money, yes. For business purposes. Is Simone Brennan a business partner? She's an associate. Is she also the recipient of an $1,800 bracelet purchased on your joint credit card? Joel said nothing. The judge removed her glasses. I'm granting the plaintiff's motion for an emergency asset freeze. All joint accounts, all business accounts held in whole or in part by Mr. Vasquez, and all property titled in his name or in the name of any LLC for which he is a registered agent are frozen pending a full financial disclosure and equitable distribution hearing. That hearing is set for February 15th. Mr. Vasquez, you are ordered to produce all financial records, including business records for both car wash locations, by January 24th. Do you understand? Your Honor. Do you understand? Yes. Good. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. Joel left without looking at me. His lawyer followed, already on his phone. I sat in the courtroom for a moment, listening to the silence. Lena touched my shoulder. You okay? Yes, I said. And I was. The next 6 weeks were quieter than I expected. Joel moved into an apartment in Pawtucket. I stayed at my mother's house, sleeping in my old bedroom with the wallpaper I'd picked out in high school. I kept working my night shifts at the hospital. I mopped floors, emptied bins, wiped down railings. My supervisor asked if I was doing all right. I told her I was. She didn't believe me, but she didn't press. Lena called every few days with updates. Joel's financials were a mess. The 2 car washes were profitable, but barely. He'd taken out loans against both properties to fund the LLC, which had no operating income and existed solely to hold the money he was siphoning from our joint account. Simone Brennan, it turned out, was listed as a 50% owner of the LLC, despite contributing nothing. The bracelet was the least of it. There were hotel charges, restaurant bills, a weekend trip to Newport. All paid for with marital funds. He's going to argue the business investments benefited you both, Lena said. But the dissipation is clear. And the forged signature is a separate issue. If the court refers it for criminal investigation, he could be looking at fraud charges. Will they? Depends on the judge. But even if they don't, we have enough for a favorable division. By February, Joel's lawyer had requested 2 extensions. The hearing was pushed to March 1st. I didn't mind. I had learned, over 11 years of night shifts, that the slow work is often the most thorough. You don't rush a floor that needs stripping. You let the solvent sit. You let it break down the layers. The final hearing took place on a cold Thursday morning. The courtroom was the same. The judge was the same. But this time, the table on Joel's side was covered in banker's boxes. His lawyer looked tired. Lena presented our case in 40 minutes. She walked through the timeline of transfers, the creation of the LLC, the forged refinance, the expenditures on Simone Brennan. She submitted 11 years of tax returns showing that I had contributed equally to the household income when you factored in my hospital salary and benefits. She submitted documentation showing that Joel had titled both car washes solely in his name, despite the fact that the initial capital for the first location had come from a loan co-signed by his father, who had since passed away, and whose estate I had helped settle. Joel's lawyer argued that the businesses were his separate property, built with his expertise and labor. He argued that the LLC was a legitimate business venture. He did not argue about the forged signature. He couldn't. The judge took a recess. When she returned, she did not sit down. I've reviewed the financials, she said. And I've reviewed the applicable case law. The 2 car wash locations, titled solely in Mr. Vasquez's name, were nonetheless built during the marriage with marital funds and marital labor. They are marital property subject to equitable distribution. The LLC, Brennan Holdings, was funded entirely with marital assets and has no legitimate business purpose. It is also subject to division. She paused. The forged signature on the refinance documents is a serious matter. I am referring this case to the Attorney General's office for review. In the meantime, I am ordering the following distribution. Mrs. Vasquez is awarded a 60% interest in both car wash properties, to be bought out by Mr. Vasquez at fair market value within 90 days, or sold if he cannot secure financing. She is awarded 100% of the funds currently held in the Brennan Holdings account. She is awarded the marital home in Mount Pleasant, with Mr. Vasquez responsible for the outstanding mortgage balance. Mr. Vasquez is responsible for all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Vasquez in this proceeding. Joel's face went white. This is unconscionable, his lawyer said, rising. Your Honor, we'll appeal. You're welcome to try, the judge said. But the record is clear. Your client forged his wife's signature, misappropriated marital assets, and funded an extramarital relationship with community property. If anything, Mrs. Vasquez is being generous by not pursuing criminal charges independently. We're adjourned. The gavel fell. Joel couldn't buy me out. The car washes, when appraised, were worth $420,000. 60% of that was $252,000. He didn't have it. The banks wouldn't lend it to him, not with the fraud investigation pending. So we sold. The sale closed in June. After the mortgages and liens were paid off, the net proceeds came to $370,000. My share was $222,000. The Brennan Holdings account held another $94,000. The house in Mount Pleasant, once Joel's name was removed from the deed and the mortgage restructured, was mine. I didn't see Joel again after the hearing. Lena told me he'd moved to Massachusetts. Simone Brennan, according to a mutual acquaintance, had stopped returning his calls sometime in April, once it became clear the money was gone. I kept working at the hospital. Not because I needed to, I could have taken a year off, more, and been fine. But because I liked the work. I liked the rhythm of it. I liked knowing that at the end of a shift, the floors were clean. In August, I enrolled at Rhode Island College. Part-time, night classes, the same way I'd done it before. This time I was studying accounting. Lena had joked that I had a good eye for irregularities. I thought she might be right. My mother asked me once if I regretted the marriage. We were sitting on her front porch, drinking iced tea, watching the neighborhood kids play stickball in the street. No, I said. Even after everything? I didn't marry him for what I'd get out of it, I said. I married him because I thought we were building something. We weren't. But that doesn't mean I regret trying. She nodded. You're stronger than I was. I just know how to clean up a mess. She laughed. By the end of that first year, I'd finished 9 credits. By the end of the second year, 18. I worked my shifts, attended my classes, and kept the house in Mount Pleasant exactly the way I wanted it. I repainted the kitchen. I tore up the carpet in the living room and refinished the hardwood underneath. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. I learned that a house is different when it's yours, not half yours, not shared, but entirely, legally, yours. Lena and I stayed in touch. She called me once to say the Attorney General had declined to prosecute the forgery. Not enough evidence of intent, she said. Which is garbage, but not surprising. It's fine, I told her. I got what I needed. You did. And then some. In November, I ran into Joel's father's widow at a stop shop in Cranston. She was in the produce aisle, picking through apples. She saw me and went still. Diane. Mrs. Vasquez. She set down the apple. I heard about the divorce. I'm sure you did. Joel said you took everything. Joel lied about a lot of things, I said. The court gave me what I was owed. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. His father would have been ashamed of him. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded back. She picked up her apple and walked away. I stood there in the produce aisle, holding a bag of oranges, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not grief. Just a quiet, clean relief. There's a kind of wisdom you only learn on your knees. Not the praying kind, the scrubbing kind. You learn that most stains don't disappear. They fade, or they're covered, or you replace the tile entirely. You learn that the dirtiest places are the ones people don't look at, under the lip of the toilet, behind the baseboard, in the grout no one notices until it's black. And you learn that clean is not the same as easy. Clean takes time. It takes repetition. It takes the discipline to start over when the first pass doesn't work. I thought about that a lot in the years after the divorce. I thought about it when I submitted my final exam in Financial Accounting 2 and passed with a 92. I thought about it when I got my associate degree, and then when I enrolled in the bachelor's program. I thought about it when the hospital promoted me to environmental services supervisor, and I traded my mop for a clipboard and started managing the team I used to be part of. I thought about it when I sold the house in Mount Pleasant, too many memories, too much work, and bought a small duplex in Fox Point. I rented out the bottom unit to a nurse who worked the same shift I used to. I lived on the top floor, where the light was good and the view was just the neighborhood, nothing fancy, nothing false. I thought about it when my mother got sick, and I took a leave from work to sit with her through chemo. She made it. The cancer didn't. We celebrated her 5-year remission at her favorite Portuguese restaurant, and she told me she was proud of me. For what? I asked. For not letting him make you small. I didn't cry then, but I did later, alone in my car in the parking lot. By my 5th year post-divorce, I'd finished my bachelor's degree. By the 7th year, I'd passed the CPA exam. By the 9th year, I was working as a forensic accountant for a mid-size firm in Providence, helping people untangle the same kind of financial mess I'd once lived in. I was good at it. I liked the puzzles. I liked finding the number that didn't fit, the transfer that didn't make sense, the signature that wasn't quite right. Lena referred clients to me sometimes. We'd meet for coffee, talk about cases, trade stories. She told me once that I had a gift for staying calm. It's not a gift, I said. It's just practice. She smiled. Most people don't practice that. Most people don't spend 11 years mopping hospital floors. Touché. I never remarried. I dated, here and there, a teacher I met at a friend's barbecue, an engineer I matched with on an app, a carpenter who came to fix my porch railing and stayed for dinner. Nothing stuck. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I was too careful. Or maybe I'd just learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, and I liked the quiet of my own life. I heard about Joel once more, years later. A mutual acquaintance mentioned he was managing a car wash in Brockton. Not owner. Manager. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. On the 10th anniversary of our divorce, I took myself to dinner. Not somewhere fancy, just a small Italian place in Federal Hill, the kind with red tablecloths and bread baskets and waiters who've worked there for 30 years. I ordered eggplant parmigiana and a glass of red wine. I sat by the window and watched the street. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Thought you'd want to know, AG finally got him. Fraud charges. Unrelated case, but same playbook. Forged documents on a business loan. I set the phone down. I picked up my wine. I looked out the window at the people walking past, bundled in coats, heading toward the holidays. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired, the way you feel at the end of a long shift when the work is done and all that's left is clocking out. I texted back, "Thanks for letting me know." She replied immediately, "You okay?" "I'm fine." Really? And I was. I finished my meal. I paid the check. I left a good tip, I always do, I know what it's like to work for them. And I walked home through the cold, clear night, past the houses with their lights on and their curtains drawn, past the corner store and the church and the park where I used to sit on my lunch breaks. When I got home, I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd bought for myself 3 years earlier, solid oak, the kind that doesn't wobble. I opened my laptop and checked my email. A new client inquiry. A question from a colleague. A newsletter from the CPA Association. I answered them all. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet. There's a line I tell my clients sometimes, when they're in the middle of it, when the spreadsheets are everywhere and the betrayal is fresh and they can't see the end yet. I tell them, the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be documented. That's what I learned, in the end. Not from law school or textbooks, but from 11 years of mopping floors and 2 years of building a case in silence. You don't win by shouting. You win by showing up, every shift, every hearing, every moment someone underestimates you. You win by knowing what you're worth and refusing to accept less. Joel thought he could erase me with a phone call and a forged signature. He thought I was too tired, too small, too unimportant to fight back. He was wrong. Not because I destroyed him, I didn't. I didn't need to. I just took what was mine, and I walked away clean. And that, in the end, was enough. The firm I worked for, Castellano Partners, occupied the 4th floor of a converted mill building overlooking the Providence River. It wasn't glamorous. The carpet was industrial, the break room smelled like burnt coffee, and my office was barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs. But the work was solid, and the people were good, and I'd learned long ago that prestige and peace are not the same thing. I handled about a dozen cases a year. Divorce asset traces, mostly. Sometimes estate disputes. Occasionally a small business fraud case, the kind where a bookkeeper has been skimming for years and no one noticed until the numbers stopped adding up. I liked those best. The slow, quiet thefts. The ones that required patience to uncover. In the spring of my 11th year post-divorce, a new case landed on my desk. The client was a woman named Renee Huang, 41, recently separated. Her husband owned a chain of dental practices across Rhode Island and southern Massachusetts. She suspected he was hiding income. She had no proof, just a feeling, too many late nights, too many vague explanations, too many zeros missing from the tax returns. I don't want to be paranoid, she said, sitting across from me in my narrow office. But I also don't want to be stupid. You're not either, I told her. If something feels wrong, it usually is. I took the case. It took me 6 weeks to find it. He'd set up an LLC in Delaware, funneled patient payments through a third-party billing service, and reclassified personal expenses as business costs. It wasn't sophisticated. It was just steady. 5 years of small, deliberate misstatements, compounding into nearly $200,000 in hidden income. When I walked Renee through the findings, she didn't cry. She just nodded. I knew, she said quietly. I just needed someone else to see it too. I see it. What do I do now? You take this to your attorney. You file. You let the court do the rest. She left my office with the report in her hands and something else in her face, something I recognized. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. 3 months later, she sent me a thank you card. Inside, she'd written, "You gave me my life back." I kept it on my desk. That summer, my mother sold the triple-decker in Federal Hill. She didn't need the space anymore, and the stairs were getting hard on her knees. She bought a small ranch in Warwick, near the water, with a garden bed out back and a porch wide enough for 2 chairs. I helped her move. We packed dishes, folded linens, sorted through boxes of things she hadn't touched in years. In the attic, we found my wedding album. She held it for a moment, then looked at me. You want this? I thought about it. No. You sure? I'm sure. She set it in the donation pile without another word. We didn't talk about Joel. We didn't need to. He was just one box among many, something that had been part of the house, and now wasn't. When the moving truck finally pulled away, my mother and I sat on the front steps of the empty house, drinking iced coffee from the Dunkin' down the street. You ever think about marrying again? She asked. Sometimes. But I like my life the way it is. She nodded. That's fair. We sat there a while longer, watching the neighborhood we'd both known for decades. The corner store where I used to buy penny candy. The church where I'd made my first communion. The park where I'd learned to ride a bike. You turned out good, my mother said. You raised me. I gave you a start. You did the rest. I didn't argue. She was right. By the 12th year after my divorce, I'd become something I never expected: content. Not in the passive sense, not settled, not resigned. Content in the active sense. I had work I believed in. I had a home I'd built myself. I had friendships that had deepened over time, the kind you only get when you stop performing and start showing up as you are. I had dinner once a month with Lena. We'd rotate restaurants, Italian one month, Thai the next, a new place someone had recommended. We'd talk about cases, about her kids, about my classes. I'd started teaching a night seminar at Community College of Rhode Island, Introduction to Forensic Accounting. 18 students, mostly older than traditional undergrads, many of them working full-time. "You're good at this," Lena said one night over pad thai. "At what?" "Teaching. You don't talk down to people." I spent 11 years being talked down to. I know what it feels like. She smiled. "See? That's what I mean." I thought about my students a lot. I thought about the woman in the back row who worked at a call center and took notes in purple ink. I thought about the guy who always showed up 10 minutes late because his shift at the warehouse didn't end until 8. I thought about the single mom who'd emailed me at midnight with a question about amortization schedules. They reminded me of who I used to be. And I wanted them to know what I'd learned, that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You just have to be the most prepared. One night after class, the woman with the purple pen stayed behind. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "How did you know you could do this?" "Do what?" "All of it. Go back to school. Change careers. Start over." I thought about it. I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was. She nodded slowly. "That's where I am now." "Then you're in the right place." She left, and I stayed in the empty classroom for a while, erasing the whiteboard, straightening the chairs. The building was quiet. I liked it that way. In the fall of that year, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But it was a Tuesday night, I was home, and I was between tasks, so I picked up. "Diane?" The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. "This is she." "It's Simone." I went still. "Simone Brennan," she clarified, as if I might have forgotten. "I know who you are." A pause. "I'm sorry to bother you." I wanted to talk." "About?" "About Joel. About everything." I sat down at my kitchen table. "Why?" "Because I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything. "I know it's too late," she continued. "I know I can't undo what I did. But I need you to know that I didn't understand what I was part of. I don't know what I thought. I was young and stupid, and I believed him when he said you didn't care, that the marriage was over, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave. He was lying. I know that now." Another pause. "He did the same thing to me," she said quietly. 2 years after you. Different woman. Same lies. I didn't find out until I saw the credit card bill. I almost laughed. Almost. "I'm not calling for sympathy," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry." I looked out my kitchen window at the neighbor's porch light, the one that flickered on every evening at 6:30. "Okay," I said. "Okay? I accept your apology." She exhaled, shaky. "Thank you." "But Simone?" "Yeah? Don't call me again." "I won't. I promise." I hung up. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not closure. Just the recognition that some chapters end quietly, without fanfare, without resolution. You just stop turning back to reread them. The following spring, I was asked to speak at a Women's Business Network event in Providence. The topic was financial literacy after divorce. I almost said no, I didn't think of myself as a public speaker. But Lena convinced me. "You have a story people need to hear," she said. So I agreed. The event was held in a hotel conference room downtown, the kind with fluorescent lights and stackable chairs. About 60 women attended. Some were recently divorced. Some were considering it. Some were just there to learn. I stood at the front of the room with a microphone and a PowerPoint I'd put together the night before. I told them the basics. How to access financial records. How to spot dissipation. How to protect yourself during asset division. I kept it practical, not personal. But at the end, during the Q&A, someone asked, "How did you stay calm through all of it?" I thought about lying. About giving them the easy answer. But I didn't. I didn't, always, I said. I cried in my car. I couldn't sleep some nights. I was terrified I'd lose everything. I paused. But I also knew that falling apart wouldn't help me. So I chose to fall apart in private and stay steady in public. Not because I'm strong. Because I didn't have another option. The room was quiet. "You do what you have to do," I said. And then, one day, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're actually living. After the event, a dozen women came up to talk to me. They thanked me. They asked for my card. One woman, in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes, gripped my hand and said, "You saved me a year of mistakes." I didn't know what to say, so I just squeezed her hand back. On the drive home, I thought about that moment in the garage, 11 years earlier, when I'd heard Joel's voice through the cracked door. I thought about how small I'd felt. How powerless. And I thought about the woman I'd become since then, not in spite of that moment, but because of what I'd chosen to do with it. The truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be documented. And sometimes, shared. 14 years after my divorce, I sat in a coffee shop in downtown Providence, across from a potential client. Her name was AITA. She was 36, a teacher, recently separated. Her husband was a contractor. She suspected he was underreporting income. She had 2 kids, a part-time job, and no idea where to start. I listened to her story. I took notes. I asked the questions I always asked. And then I told her the truth. "This is going to take time," I said. "It's going to be hard. You're going to want to give up some days. But if you're willing to do the work, I'll help you." She nodded. "I'm willing." Good. We shook hands. After she left, I sat there for a while, finishing my coffee, watching people pass by the window. Students heading to class. Parents pushing strollers. A man in a suit checking his phone. I thought about all the cases I'd worked, all the women I'd helped, all the late nights spent tracing transactions and drafting reports. I thought about my students, my mother, my little duplex in Fox Point. I thought about Joel, briefly, the way you think about a scar, noting it, then moving on. And I thought about the life I'd built, piece by piece, floor by floor, one clean pass at a time. I didn't have everything. I didn't have a partner, or children, or a big house with a view. I didn't have the life I'd imagined at 23, standing in City Hall in a borrowed dress, believing love and work were enough. But I had something better. I had a life I'd chosen. A life I'd fought for. A life that was mine. And that, in the end, was more than enough. 15 years after the divorce, on a warm October evening, I stood in the backyard of my duplex in Fox Point, pulling the last of the tomatoes from the vine. The season was ending. The leaves were turning. The air smelled like wood smoke and rain. My tenant, the nurse, waved from her kitchen window. I waved back. I brought the tomatoes inside, washed them, set them on the counter. I made myself a simple dinner, pasta, olive oil, garlic, basil from the plant on my windowsill. I ate at my kitchen table, the oak one that didn't wobble, with a book propped open beside my plate. After dinner, I washed the dishes. I wiped down the counters. I swept the floor. And then I sat on my back porch, in the chair I'd bought at a yard sale and repainted myself, and watched the sky fade from pink to purple to deep, quiet blue. Somewhere out there, Joel was living his life. Somewhere out there, Simone was too. And so were all the people who doubted me, dismissed me, underestimated me. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the women I'd helped. The students I'd taught. The floors I'd cleaned, and the numbers I'd traced, and the life I'd built from scratch when everything I thought I knew had fallen apart. I was thinking about my mother, asleep in her little ranch by the water, dreaming whatever she dreamed. I was thinking about the young woman I used to be, standing in a hospital hallway with a mop in her hands, believing hard work and love were enough. She was wrong about love. But she was right about work. And she was stronger than she ever knew. The stars came out, one by one, pinpricks of light in the wide dark sky. I sat there until the air turned cold, until the neighbor's porch light flickered off, until the only sound was the wind moving through the leaves. Then I stood, locked the door, and went to bed. Not because the story was over. Because it was just beginning. Years blur when you stop measuring your life by what you've lost and start measuring it by what you've built. I don't remember every case, every client, every late night at the office. But I remember the moments that mattered. I remember the day I paid off my duplex. I remember the afternoon I got the call that I'd been promoted to senior forensic accountant. I remember the morning one of my students emailed to say she'd passed the CPA exam, and she wanted to thank me. I remember the quiet, steady accumulation of a life well lived. I retired at 63. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd saved carefully. I'd invested wisely. I had enough. I sold the duplex and bought a small cottage in Narragansett, walking distance from the beach. I spent my mornings reading on the porch. I spent my afternoons walking the shore, collecting sea glass, watching the tides. My mother passed peacefully at 87, in her sleep, in the house she loved. I was with her. So was my cousin Maria, and my Aunt Teresa, and a hospice nurse who held her hand and told her it was okay to let go. At the funeral, someone asked me if I had any regrets. I thought about it. No, I said. And I meant it. Because regret is what you feel when you don't try. When you stay silent. When you let someone else write the ending. I didn't do that. I wrote my own. One floor at a time. One case at a time. One quiet, deliberate choice at a time. And in the end, the life I built was exactly the one I wanted. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not the kind of story people tell at parties. Just mine. Clean, clear, and entirely my own.